of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
You your assy molasses!
Watch this place for me?
Are you kidding? Running a bar is my dream. Well, that and waking up a rooster. Yeah! Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Quietly, or there will be trouble.
This is 12 Gauge Investigative. Let's jump in.
All right. How's everybody doing on this Wednesday night? My name is 12 Gauge, and this is my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. You know, it's been a minute since I've been on here. I've been working on my schoolwork. You know how that goes. School comes first, last semester before the degree. So, I've been putting a lot more effort in doing that than being on YouTube. Yeah, I do too, Rondi. She said, every time I see Gacy, I see JB. That is so true. Tonight I thought I'd do a little more of the book that I've started a while back. Hopefully have Mr. Murphy as a guest someday. But, if you haven't heard of this book, it's called The Book of Murder by Matt Murphy. He is an awesome ex-prosecutor in California. And he wrote about his time as the prosecutor and some of the struggles that he had encompassed throughout his journey. So I wanted to say hello once again to you guys. I haven't forgotten about you. To the new subscribers, thank you so much for being kind enough to give the channel a chance. I will do some Idaho 4 stuff, but not tonight. There's not really enough new stuff. Maybe this weekend, if we're lucky, I can do some more stuff that include the Idaho stuff. But for tonight, I'm going to go ahead and read this book. I'm going to start right off where it says, Larry Montgomery met with her and I tagged along. I had no doubt about Eric Napisky's guilt even before we talked to Suzanne, but this was the testimony that made it a case I felt very comfortable we could win. Larry told her we didn't want to scare her, but her testimony was the key. She agreed to help us move forward. With Suzanne's memories of her conversation with Eric, the motive became very clear. It's entirely possible that Eric genuinely had no idea that Nanette and Bill were romantically involved. He may have had no clue Nanette was living a double life. Nanette likely told Eric a story that they had separate bedrooms in the house, and in order to convince him to murder Bill, Nanette claimed that Bill had forced himself on her. In police interviews again and again, Eric insisted that he would have broken up with Nanette if he knew she was sleeping with another man. She wanted it all. Bill's money, the easy life, a hunky boyfriend, and masterminded this plot. Naposky might have been manipulated, or maybe not. But when you take someone's word and then choose to enter the home of a man you don't know for the purpose of killing him, you're responsible for the full weight of that decision. No matter what Nanette told him, Eric knew Nanette would benefit financially from the murder. Even if it was only a small fraction of his thinking under California law, it is enough, and Eric would still be off the hook for a first-degree murder with the special circumstance of murder for financial gain. When putting together a list of suspects, you start with the population of the earth and whittle it down from there. In this case, putting all the evidence together, we knew that the killer was in Newport on December 15th and needed a reason to want to kill Bill McLaughlin. We knew Naposki was in the Newport on December 15th. We knew from Suzanne that Naposki thought Bill had tried to force himself on Nanette. The killer knew that Bill would be home. Nanette knew Bill would be home. The killer used an original pedestrian gate key. Nanette was missing her original pedestrian gate key. The killer had access to the house key. Eric had access to the house key. The key was made at an Ace Hardware store, and Eric had keys made at an Ace Hardware store. The killer planned the murder. Naposki inquired about a silencer for his gun. The killer used a Beretta F-Series 9mm. Eric owned a Beretta F-Series 9mm. The killer used Federal Hydra-Shock ammunition. Naposki used Federal Hydra-Shock ammunition. When the killer traveled toward the murder scene, Eric was traveling toward the murder scene at the same time, according to him. To get to work, he had to pass within 100 feet of Bill's front door. Nanette tried to hide Eric's identity from the police. Eric was not buying cars, and Bill was not selling cars. But Eric had Bill's license plate in his notebook. Eric lied about his relationship with Nanette. He lied about where he was, and he lied about which gun he had loaned when no one but the police and the killer knew what gun was used in the murder. It is hard to build an effective case when there are no witnesses and no physical evidence. No murder weapon, no fingerprints, no DNA. But circumstantial evidence this overwhelming is impossible to ignore. I'm going to stop right there and give a comment on that because, many times in other cases, people have been stuck on the circumstantial evidence. Well, I'm going to tell you, more often than not, there are convictions where there is only circumstantial evidence. And people get stuck on that. They've been stuck on that for a while. Well, there's only circumstantial evidence. Okay, well, there's only circumstantial evidence. But let me tell you, circumstantial evidence is enough to convict. And if you don't believe that, you're about to believe it, because in a couple months, I believe that there's going to be a conviction in one of these high-profile cases that we've been following. Let me turn down these lights, make it a different color. Because it's kind of like... Okay. That's a little... No. Maybe we'll go with the yellow. We'll go with the yellow tint. Well, as far as circumstantial evidence is concerned, it does convict, and it probably will convict in the near future. It will show you that you don't need to have all the evidence, but the pieces need to tie together. And that's what it's going to show you. By 2009, Eric and Nanette were living entirely separate lives. And in the 15 years since the murder, they each had to have delighted in the idea that they had gotten away with it. Nanette was married again and probably never even gave Bill another thought. Eric had attempted to return to football, but the murder investigation wasn't something the NFL was eager to look past. His lawyer even sent a letter to the DA's office trying to get them to clear Naposki's name. Eric went to Barcelona to play football in 1996. He played over there before the murder also, and helped the Barcelona Dragons win the 1997 World Bowl. His coach recalled in Sports Illustrated that he even asked Eric about the case. I said, "Eric, what's that all about?" And he said, "Coach, it's something that happened over there. But believe me, I wasn't a part of it. And I didn't pursue it. I just said, okay." He ended up returning to the U.S., moving to Connecticut, getting remarried, having 2 more kids, taking college classes, and opening a gym. We had worked the case for over a year, and it was decision time. How did they know Nanette would be coming into money after the first of the year to buy a house or invest in a business? She had nothing. Eric had less, and neither of them had a crystal ball that could have predicted Bill's murder. Many cold cases get solved because of forensics, and others get solved by old-fashioned common sense and gumshoe police work. These people weren't just killers, they were arrogant killers. I made the decision. The first person I called to share the news with was Kim McLaughlin. Hi, Kim. I just wanted to give you a heads up that we filed charges today. There was a long pause. Against who? She inquired with a sheepish tone. Well, Nanette and Eric, I replied. There was another long pause. For what? She asked. Well, for the murder of your dad, of course. Upon hearing that, Kim broke down in tears and cried and cried. Her father had been murdered by his girlfriend for money, and her brother Kevin tragically had drowned while swimming in Hawaii in 1999, 5 years later. He had moved there so his mom could care for him after his father was killed. It's not hard to wonder if he would still be alive if Bill had never gotten mixed up with Nanette Johnson. The people who did it, the mean-spirited, greedy people who did it, had made out just fine and had been left free to live their lives. To Kim, that phone call represented a day that justice finally arrived. Most people have no idea what a family goes through under those circumstances, and hopefully they never will. These are the monsters you find in Frederick Nietzsche's Abyss. Despite sacrificing most of a personal life to do the job as well as I possibly could, moments like that make it hard to have any regrets. We still had arrests to make, and I still had a case to try. We set up 2 teams, one in Connecticut and one in Orange County. The idea was that we would give Eric one last chance to do the right thing. We would give him the opportunity to call Nanette on a recorded line and get her to make admissions. On May 20th, 2009, with the assistance of Greenwich Police, we arrested Eric Andrew Naposki on his way to work. Larry Montgomery and Newport detective, now Chief, Joe Cartwright, accompanied Eric to an interview room. He yelled at the 2 detectives as Larry tried to conduct another interview. He interrupted over and over, saying, "You know I didn't do this," and demanding to know what new evidence existed. Larry finally finished the interview. "I know you did," he said, causing Naposki to fly into a rage. When asked if he would be willing to put a call into Nanette and assist in the investigation, he said words to the effect of, "Fuck you, see you in court." A little like my Russian mobster Ramadan Dokovic in that convertible Mercedes, long on bravado, short on brains. At that point, still early on the West Coast, I gave the green light for the Orange County team to arrest Nanette. The detective sergeant in charge was none other than Dave Byington, who had been the young undercover narcotics officer on the sand outside the beach house the night before the funeral. Byington walked up to the door with a search warrant and an arrest warrant. He knocked politely. "Hello, Nanette. Remember me?" "No. Well, I remember you, and I'm here to arrest you for murder." "Which murder?" she said as she tried to close the door in his face. "Wow, which murder? I don't know how many you've committed, but this one is for the murder of Bill McLaughlin." This was early in the morning, and it didn't break our hearts that with a woman that vain, her booking photo, the one that would be distributed widely in the media, would reflect her as an unmade-up early morning worst. Seemed strangely fitting. I had launched the proverbial missile, but now I had to actually prove the case. Somehow, Naposki managed to put together an amazing legal team A former friend of his had become a well-respected defense lawyer in New York City. He included two fine former prosecutors named Rich Portali and Angela McDonald. Local counsel was Gary Polson, recently retired from the Orange County Superior Court, and a defense lawyer on the Schuyler DeLeon case. These were very good lawyers. Nanette was appointed a public defender. Let me say hello to some of the people in here. I guess it's grown since I started reading. Hey, Texas, what's up, buddy? Long time. Michelle, how are you doing? You're exactly right, Michelle. I like that comment. YouTube full of Darwin's best award winners. You're so right. And there's a lot of them. Originally from Ireland, Mick had his acerbic wit that juries tend to love. I had my work cut out for me, and I knew it. Nanette's arrangement was a circus. Unbeknownst to her attorney, someone had encouraged members of her church to show up and ask for her release. That's right, her church. There must have been 50 well-meaning people there asking to address the court, and each one of them had been duped. The judge asked for my input, and I explained that we'd been working on this case for well over a year, and we knew Nanette Johnson far better than they did. I predicted that while they certainly meant well, once they had the opportunity to research the McLaughlin case and her alleged involvement, none of them would come to the next hearing. Sure enough, her support evaporated quickly, and only her adult daughter and husband attended the continued arraignment a couple weeks later. Nanette was not released. Duped just like Bill, Nanette's then husband was also an innocent caught up in her world of lies. He had no clue what he was getting into when he hooked up with that woman. Among the items recovered during the search of their home was unpaid credit card bills for which he was financially responsible in the amount of almost $200,000. He had no idea the cards even existed. As he listened to the evidence pile up during the preliminary hearing, he reached out to the investigators and provided us with a series of photographs he'd later found in Nanette's belongings. They depicted Nanette and Eric in the weeks leading up to and immediately after Bill's murder. The ones right after the murder showed them living a happy life with smiles all around. Let me ask you guys in the chat, okay? What is it with these people taking pictures and selfies after they commit murder? What is up with that phenomenon? I mean, they're not the only ones that did it. We are following a case right now where the individual took a selfie the morning after. So it's a thing. Let me give you a little insight. If you ever commit murder, do not have a digital trail or selfies, or even if you're holding the thumbs up. And that could mean that you were a good little boy and you finally were able to button the top button on your shirt. Don't do it. Don't do it. Do not do it. I understand their mementos, but do not do it. Eric's defense, not surprisingly, was to blame Nanette. His team also went all in on the purported phone call from the Denny's. According to Naposky, he had a phone bill from a calling card back in 1994 that showed he returned the page from a bar manager at 8:52 p.m. from Tustin, but the bill had been lost. There are two fundamental problems with that defense. First, an alibi, in the immortal words of my colleague Larry Yellen, is when you're in Vegas at the time of a murder, on casino video, sipping a pina colada next to an Elvis impersonator at the bar, not 10 minutes away and heading directly to the murder scene. A call at 8:52, even if that was true, still would have given him plenty of time to get to Newport and into Bill's kitchen by 9:10. Good grief. The second problem requires a little more thought. Naposki knew he was a suspect within days of the murder. We had all the angry interviews with the police to prove it. If he knew you were a suspect in a murder that you did not commit and had a phone bill that you believed cleared you of that murder, how did that get lost? If you're truly innocent, how many rooms would you wallpaper with copies of that bill? You know, that's why I like this book, because it is speaking in such layman's terms that, you know, anybody can understand it. If you're truly innocent, why would you lose the phone bill that was going to clear you and use as your alibi of a murder? Why would you do it? Once again, what's the word of the night? I think everybody in the chat is using the word Darwinism. Bubba says, "Come here, boy." Exactly. And you probably said it in that word, in that that voice too. Bubba, who has a love for newbies. Yeah. We accumulate birth certificates, social security cards, and other important documents over the course of our lives and usually find a way to hang on to them. That's true. In the life of a murder suspect, nothing would be more important than a document that you think proves you're innocent. And yet the only person who had a clear recollection of ever seeing it was Naposki himself. Ignoring the fact that the phone bill, even if it existed, would not have provided a legitimate alibi for Eric. For him to claim that he lost the one piece of evidence he believed might have saved his life is a hard story to swallow. The jury rejected Eric's defense. What do y'all think? You think that that Eric had some bad luck? Hey, Leslie and Billy, thank you for being here. Great job on that trivia the other day, by the way. I'm going to be doing those daily, so hopefully you guys look out for those in the post, or it's called Community Tab area. So think about that, guys. You have an alibi. It is this bill, and you freaking lose it. You know, and you lose it. Would you not have held on to that? Yeah, Eric doesn't seem too with it, does he? So the jury rejected Eric's defense. Now, that trial was pretty much the mirror image of Eric's. She claimed that Eric was jealous of Bill and killed him to get him out of the way. The fact that she stole so much money and had so much to gain financially was simply coincidence. Of course it was. To an objective jury, the accumulation of evidence against both of them was just too much. Nanette was cheating on Bill in an increasingly brazen way and stealing from him more and more the closer they got to December 15th. Which would Bill going to find out about first? Either way, she would be out on her butt with nothing. From Nanette's point of view, Bill had to die. Na, Bill had to die. And besides, when I stood in front of the jury and explained the Christmas tree decoration with wide open shades at the beach house the night before the funeral, I think I had all 12 deliberating jurors nodding along. A jury needs to be convinced of the legal case? Absolutely. But life experience plays into it for sure. You need the evidence to make sense on a human level. So did you just hear that? This individual is a hell of a prosecutor back in his day. So for future reference, I want you to think about what he just said here. A jury needs to be convinced of the legal case. Absolutely. But life experience plays into it for sure. You need the evidence to make sense on a human level. So, in some of the cases that are coming up, even one that proved to show the lady was guilty, shame on you, Lori Vallow. And here it was hard to conclude anything except the fact that Nanette knew who the killer was. Eric Naposki and Nanette Johnson were each sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Eric had never stopped talking and trying to argue for his innocence. After his conviction, he asked to speak to us one last time. We went to the jail and his latest story was a doozy. He said that Nanette had asked him to kill Bill and he refused, but that he connected her with a hitman who could do it, but only if he could use Eric's guns, which he said he'd given to Nanette as a gift. This comes after years of insisting he had nothing to do with it, and then turning around and saying Nanette did it. So, once again, if you're listening to the story, he's saying, I had nothing to do with it. But then he's like, but I might have loaned the gun that I gave Nanette to have him killed. So an accessory after the fact. After the fact. I agree with you, Texas, on that one. I agree with you. That is such a sad case. Yep, that is such a sad case. The problem with this latest story, apart from it being entirely false, is that not too many hitmen are likely to ask if they can borrow your gun. Yeah, let me go whack this dude, but can I borrow your gun? The beauty is it also makes him a full conspirator in a murder committed for financial gain. Oh, he just implicated himself in another damn crime, which is exactly what he was convicted of. Come on, dude. Naposki yelled at me as he was being let out of the court after his sentencing. You fucking blew it, Murphy. You fucking blew it. Naposki was trying to tell me I'd put the wrong guy in jail. Fortunately, the Court of Appeal disagreed with him. There was a photo taken that shows Kim McLaughlin the moment the guilty verdict was read in court. It showed the woman at the end of a long road, bursting into tears because the people responsible for murdering her father were finally going to face justice. Sometimes when I'm feeling down, I will Google that image just to remind myself that every once in a while, the good guys can still win. Chapter 6. Sadism, Serial Killers, and Bachelor Number 1. Let me see what you guys are talking about. Are y'all enjoying it so far? That case is terrible. I'm probably going to do an update on that here in a couple days, maybe this weekend. Who knows? Who knows what 12 is going to do? Just be looking for a notification. I agree with you, Texas. I've already mentioned my good friend Dennis Conway, one of the colleagues I was so privileged to work with over the years. Dennis and I used to spend hours strategizing before trials, especially when it came to our cross-examination of defense experts. Dennis was promoted from the gang unit where he had worked for years with Howard Gundy and Mike Murray, the former Marine and the West Point graduate, respectively. And the three of them were thick as thieves. Dennis, the youngest of 11 children in a blue-collar Irish Catholic family, grew up in a small town outside of Boston. He had a difficult home life as a kid and hitchhiked to California not long after his 17th birthday. He worked as a bartender for several years in Newport Beach before his girlfriend became pregnant, and he found himself a single dad without a college degree. Dennis wanted something better for his son, so he took advantage of a little-known provision of the California Professional Code that allowed the person to practice law without an undergraduate education as long as they graduate as long as they graduate from a California accredited law school and somehow manage to pass the bar exam. Nobody does it this way because it is nearly impossible. But Dennis scraped and saved and studied, going to school at night for 5 years before finally graduating and passing the test. Stubborn and determined, Dennis pulled it off, all in the service of creating a better life for his boy. Years later, when we rotated into homicide together, his office was flanked on one side by Carolyn Carlisle Raines, a graduate of Yale Law School, and on the other by Mary Ann Macaulay, a smart and effective advocate and genuine debutante from the American South. The women were refined, genteel, and rich in impressive educational pedigrees. And sandwiched right between them was Dennis, unpolished, strong-willed, and enormously talented trial lawyer. Dennis, like Howard and Mike, was very much a part of Lou's mutant warrior rebuilding plan for the homicide unit. His law degree might not have impressed anyone, but the way he got it sure did. His grit was admired by the people who ran the office back then, just as it should have been. In trial, as in life, Dennis was an absolute scrapper. As we were walking through the parking lot one day on our way to the gym, we ran into Mike and Howard, who were entering the building from the opposite direction. They were bickering like an old married couple. The same argument they've been having for a week. Dennis said with a laugh, "It's about Doppler radar. Neither know jack shit about it, but they won't give an inch. If they ever tried a case against each other, it would literally never end." I had known them both for years and considered them friends, but I didn't know them anywhere near as well as Dennis did. Those guys have been fighting somebody their whole lives. He said, "Tell them they can't and they'll die trying to prove you wrong." That quote has stuck with me ever since. Dennis had an unconventional education, but he is as smart as anyone I have ever known and a keen student of human nature. "Haven't you ever noticed," he asked with a grin, "that everyone in the unit who has ever done anything worthwhile comes from a fucked up home, including you, Murph?" I've never thought about it before. Lou had been terribly poor as a kid before he joined in the Marine Corps. Rick King had been one of those lost young men who got into trouble in the late 60s and received a stern suggestion from the judge that he consider military instead of going to jail. The military in those days meant Vietnam, and Rick enlisted anyway. He did 2 combat tours as a Navy Seabee and came home a decorated war hero. Like Dennis, Mike, and Howard each had rough childhoods, which drove Mike to West Point and Howard, like Lou, into the Marines. These guys were fearless, lived for the fight, and were positively dominant in trial. They also seemed to take personal offense whenever a defense expert was trotted into court to testify about some killer's supposedly hard childhood. What do y'all think about this? This is awesome, I think. I agree. Those people with the hardest childhood sometimes become the best warriors. You know, they really do. There's people that sit around and bitch and gripe about how hard they had it in life and how this was wrong and that was wrong. But look at all these success stories that we read about of these individuals that had it the hardest that many of us can envision, and they turned their shitty life into a success story. So the next time that you're sitting around listening to, whether it be YouTubers or whether it be TikTokers, and the words of J.B. Gunner, snack cake eaters, you know, complaining about their lives and complaining about attorneys and lawyers and judges, think about all these people sitting behind those desks and their compassion for one thing. justice. You know, it irritates me to an extent to hear people say, in a particular case, that people are corrupt from the top to the bottom. Am I naive to think that there's not bad apples? Of course there is. There's bad apples in everything we do. But to say that everybody who's ever worn the badge or ever sat behind and slammed down that gavel is a bad person or has an agenda, that's far-fetched for me to even think about. You know? You know, we have bad people on YouTube, but people flock to them for whatever reason. Without a question one about their integrity, about anything that they do, anything they say. But yet, these same people have the audacity to go into chats, to go into live, to go all over the place without a way to be seen and critique the individuals that are just trying to do the right thing. You'll hear it tonight. There's lives going on right now talking about certain things that went wrong in this case and how people are out to get certain people and blah, blah, blah. How I even saw today is that they believe that Brian's a genius. In the same voice, talking about Kaylee and Maddie having an OnlyFans. In the same voice. Same breath almost. Tells you a lot. In comparison, I was very fortunate as a kid. I grew up in a nice area. My parents had money. And I can't for a moment compare my circumstances to what some of my colleagues experienced. My father was a good person and I was proud of him. But it's fair to say that our relationship was more than a little strained. A brilliant man, a genuine prodigy, and a renowned physician. He graduated from Northwestern Medical School with a full-ride academic scholarship. The curse of the Irish runs very deep in my family, as I've mentioned, and the raging case of functional alcoholism eventually led to his sobriety when I was 7, and my parents divorced when I was 10. He just wasn't around much when we were little, which was fine. But my mother, Canadian, white, Scottish roots, had alcohol issues of her own. Although she initiated the divorce when my dad moved out, she went off. She went well off the rails and into several years of very heavy drinking. She loved us to death and had no malice, but it was a particularly rough situation for my younger sister and brother. I reached a point at age 14 when I could no longer handle the chaos or the deteriorating conditions of my mom's house, so I moved in with my dad a couple miles away. It was a dramatic decision and it broke her heart, but I had to do it. In her boundless empathy, particularly for animals, we had a home full of dogs and cats, half housebroken at best, that she had rescued at one point or another and couldn't place. We had a parrot, a guinea pig, and for a time, even a chicken. Every animal in that house, and therefore every person who lived there, had fleas. As she drank more and more, it felt like the place was descending into madness, and I had to get out. Though she was a sweet soul, and as well mentioned as they come, her drinking and emotional liability, when doing so, made it difficult for her to properly protect herself or her kids. She never abused us in any way, but might have been a little blind to some who would. Still, I love my mom. She loved us back, and real love from a flawed parent is really the best any of us can ever hope for. Anyways, despite her drinking, I loved her dearly for the rest of her life. My father's home was the opposite, clean, quiet, and perfectly organized. It had been my sanctuary, and I jumped at the chance to move in. Although sober and well-meaning, my father possessed a raging temper that swung from person to person like a cannon turret. After I'd lived in his house for a year, the cannon swung towards me, and he kicked me out at 15. I couldn't move back to my mom's, so I slept on the floor in my best friend's bedroom for a week until my dad calmed down and let me come back. From that moment on, I was on notice. True stability, at least at home, just wasn't going to be a part of my world. A year later, as I was preparing for the SAT exam, he did it again. This time it was when he was away at an AA retreat, and I threw a small party for a few friends, okay, perhaps 25. I thought I had plenty of time to clean up. But he came home 2 days early, in an age without cell phones, to give me some warning. It was a good example of the what can possibly go wrong logic of a 16-year-old kid, and I deserved to get in trouble. My dad walked in like Dean Warmer from the movie Animal House and exploded like the cartoon character Yosemite Sam. So out I went, again, this time for the better part of 2 months. I must have crashed on the couch of every friend I had before the kindly parents of one of them learned of my circumstances and let me move in with them. They were incredibly nice people to whom I'm grateful for this day, but it took a heavy toll on the relationship with my father, and after one more good rage when I was in law school, we didn't talk for almost 20 years. He did send me to Jesuit High School, the very best, as well as to help me pay for college, and he allowed me far more opportunity than some of my buddies in the unit got from their parents. I carry no bitterness toward my father and really never have. In fact, I see myself as very lucky. Alcoholism is a monster. Though, and from the perspective of a kid growing up in the environment, I suppose I'd been fighting something my whole life as well. When Dennis and I got back from the gym that afternoon, it occurred to me that perhaps I had a lot more in common with my impressive colleagues than I might have felt when I first arrived in the unit. I began to relate to them in ways I had not before. I started feeling like we belonged together at that time, in that place, doing that job. In the years to come, my colleagues became my bickering, wonderful, brilliant brothers and sisters, and the homicide unit was as much at home as I have ever known. They all had demons of their own, and I loved them all the more for it. But demons in the form of addiction, anger, or loneliness are all metaphorical. Lou was about to come into my office and introduce me to a real one. The summer of 1979 was an interesting time everywhere, but particularly in Southern California. Trying to get out of my mother's house as much as possible back then, I got my very first surfboard in June and spent every minute I could with my friends at the beach. While the rest of the country was listening to Michael Jackson and buying the first generation of Sony Walkmans, a group of surfers from Santa Monica had taken advantage of the newly invented urethane skateboarding wheel and were in the process of revolutionizing the sport. Skateboards had gone from being children's toys with clay wheels to the apex of cool for the kids growing up in the coastal communities of Los Angeles, San Diego, and everywhere in between. Young skaters like Tony Alva and Stacy Peralta began landing the first legitimate aerials in drain background pools across the affluent areas of Venice and Santa Monica. Pretty soon, every kid in a beach community wanted a pair of Vans skateboarding shoes, and a trend was to personalize them by riding on the white rubber insole or outsole. While the rest of the country was still grooving to Donna Summer and the Bee Gees, disco had become decidedly unhip in surf culture at the time. For teenagers living in that world, the summer of 1979 was all about Pink Floyd, lightning bolt shirts, skateboarding, and those crazy Vans shoes. You know, I can say that I've never owned a pair. I have never owned a pair of Vans shoes. Have y'all ever owned a pair of Vans? On June 20th, 1979, 12-year-old Robin Samso went to the beach in Huntington with their best friend, Bridget Wilbert. They were sitting on towels near the water when they were approached by a man with long hair and a camera who asked to take their pictures. He was in a photography contest, he explained, and could win a prize if they would pose for him. Robin was willing, Bridget was cautious, and when Bridget saw the man reach over to touch Robin's leg, Bridget pulled her friend back and reminded her that she needed to leave soon to get to the ballet studio where she was answering phones in order to pay for her dance classes. A nearby mother of one on their friend didn't like what she saw either and chased the man away. Shortly afterward, Bridget lent Robin her bike to get to the dance studio, and Robin was never seen again. I said, "Don't stop," Bridget told ABC News. I said, "Don't." I read that wrong. I said, "Don't stop," Bridget told ABC News, but when Robin did not arrive at the ballet studio and then never came home, it became increasingly clear that something terrible had happened to her. As hours turned into days, Robin's mother was beside herself with worry, and the Huntington Beach Police Department went to work. Among the officers assigned to the case was a brand new 27-year-old detective named Craig Robinson. Craig was young, hungry, and dedicated. He immediately wondered if the photographer at the beach was responsible for Robin's disappearance. He arranged for Bridget to sit down with a forensic police artist named Marilyn Draws, and they created a composite sketch of the man who had approached them on the beach. The resulting image was released to the media, along with a photo of the young, innocent 12-year-old Robin Samso. I wonder if this is going to be Bundy. Not long after the sketch hit the television news, Detective Robinson received a call from a parole officer. "I just saw the sketch you guys released. You need to take a look at one of the parolees on my caseload. His name is Rodney James. Oh, God. Rodney James Alcala. And for those of you that don't know that name, he is the dating game killer. Y'all remember him? Rodney James Alcala. It was the end of the day, and investigators had been up for almost 24 hours at that point. Work breaks are critical for detectives in cases like this because fatigue often causes mistakes. Detective Art Draws, Marilyn's husband, left the police department soon after they were contacted by the parole officer. He planned to go home, grab some food, catch a little sleep, and return to the station a few hours later. He collapsed onto his couch and mindlessly turned on the TV. In case you aren't old enough to remember the Dating Game television show from the 1960s through the 80s, here's how it went. 3 bachelors were introduced on one side of a petition, and then a pretty young bachelorette came out on the other side, unable to see the men but able to hear their voices. She would ask a series of questions to the 3 contenders, usually loaded with silly double entendres, and ultimately choose her favorite to go on a date with. It was G-rated, harmless, and from a more innocent time in pop culture, when the airwaves weren't inundated with cringy reality television. As Jim Lang, the show's host, cheerfully introduced the contestants, Droz nearly fell off the couch. Bachelor number 1 is Rodney Alcala. Literally, as Detective Robinson was in the process of learning as much as he could about Alcala and generating a search warrant for Alcala's mother's home, there was the potential suspect on TV, laughing, joking, and smiling. Draws couldn't believe what he was looking at. Years later, it is striking to watch the video. and it's available online if you're curious, knowing who he was and what he'd been doing both before and after the episode aired. On the evening of June 26, 1979, Detective Droz watched in amazement as Alcala, in front of a studio audience, presented as handsome, charming, and quick with a joke. Introduced as a successful photographer who might be found skydiving or motorcycling during his off hours. The truth was that he had taken pictures of hundreds of young women, young girls, and young boys, luring them in front of his camera with compliments and attention, and getting them to take their clothes off. Alcala was, in fact, a trained photographer. He had graduated from UCLA's Fine Arts program, and detectives later learned that he had even sold some of his photos to pornographic magazines. The best time is at night. Nighttime is when it really gets good, he told Bachelorette Cheryl Bradshaw. She asked the three bachelors what kind of food they would be if served for dinner. I'm called the banana, and I look really good, Alcala said. Peel me. That's not creepy, is it, women? Is that women? I mean, is that creepy? I'll play the dating game thing here in a minute after I finish reading. I'm going to read for an hour, and then I'm going to play that and call it a night. Cheryl Bradshaw chose Alcala over the other two dating game contenders, drawn in by the same charm that likely lured his victims. But once she was able to spend some time with him backstage, she wasn't so sure. The executive producer of the show at the time, Mike Mexter, had also found Alcala a little creepy. There's that word. A strange personality, he told ABC, and didn't want to cast him, but his wife Ellen, the show's contestant coordinator, thought he was handsome and overruled her husband. Bachelor number 2, actor Jed Mills, agreed that something seemed off about Alcala. And remember later that backstage Alcala told him, ominously, I always get my girl. But somehow he had an appeal to women and the ability to read them, sense who was vulnerable, and know just what to say to get their guard down. Before their scheduled date, Cheryl Bradshaw called the show's producers and said she was feeling uncomfortable. She decided to cancel. For her, the decision may well have saved her life. It may sound strange coming from a career prosecutor, but serial killers are mesmerizing. They occupy a unique space in our collective imagination that seems to tap into some deep and genuine primal fear. It makes sense that humans, like every other animal, would evolve with an innate understanding that we too can become prey. In the modern world, lions may not pose the same danger they once did, but there are still plenty of predators lurking in the dark, smarter, much harder to catch, and far less understood. Both terrible and compelling serial killers are the quintessential boogeymen, the stuff of legend, the sources of myth, and the targets of cutting-edge forensic science. Serial killers have been the subject of countless books, movies, and even musicals. The Threepenny Opera and Sweeney Todd are examples of serial murder, literally put to song. The term serial killer is really more of an academic concept than a legal one. There are no statutory criteria for what constitutes a serial killer, and when prosecuting one of these cases, the category they fall under is the far more mundane multiple murderer. But in the academic world, as well as in the FBI, there have long been attempts to study, define, and understand the minds of those who commit these horrific crimes. Entire seminars and synopses have been dedicated to crafting a definition of what it means to be a serial killer, with most ultimately landing on a statement so anodyne as the meaningless, the unlawful killing of two or more victims by the same offender in separate events, offered one FBI study. But under that definition, Any active gangster with good aim and a little luck would be included, along with plenty of drug dealers, mafia hitmen, and even some medical personnel in state to prohibit assisted suicide. These are not the same as the sadistic sexual predators like Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, or Jeffrey Dahmer, who would fit any definition we might want to apply. I prosecuted 13 defendants during my time in homicide who met the most basic requirement, but only 6 were true serial killers. And between them, they likely accounted for well over 100 murders, and certainly over 100 separate sexual assaults. They were clever, prolific, and incredibly cruel. One of the most common questions people ask about serial killers is, what on earth makes someone do that? We yearn to make sense of otherwise senseless killings. Blaming childhood abuse seems like an easy explanation, reassuring, understandable, and safe. Like a zombie bite, a person only turns into a monster if they first been bitten by one. Avoid a bite and avoid those who have themselves been bitten, and all is well. No monsters in, no monsters out. The problem is that in reality, the idea that abuse is to blame for serial killing is almost as fictional as zombies themselves. I shared that common misconception when I first arrived in homicide. I thought serial killers would be like the character Buffalo Bill from the movie The Silence of the Lambs, who kidnap women in order to kill them and wear their skin. I imagined grotesque loners who were the twisted products of terrible childhood trauma, social outcasts who had been driven into mad, misogynistic bloodlust from prolonged ill treatment, and then the omnipresent pressures of modern American life. I looked for years, but I couldn't find Buffalo Bill. Instead, I kept encountering defendants who were pretty much exactly the same as the serial rapists I had been prosecuting in sexual assault for the previous 4 years. Instead of sad, lonely outcasts, serial rapists tend to be arrogant, narcissistic, cruel, and entitled. They typically have jobs, steady relationship with consenting sexual partners, no shorter of academic ability and social success. In my experience, most of them have no misconceptions regarding their moral compass. They know their actions are wrong. They just don't care. Soon after my arrival in homicide, the district attorney asked me to try the case of a particularly vicious serial sex offender named Douglas Hopper. Hopper was a multi-convicted rapist who had been to prison several times. During his most recent prison term, after manipulating an unforgivingly gullible prison psychologist, he had been deemed to have a low risk of recidivism and was released. He immediately set about raping more women. His final spree involved the rape of at least 2 real estate agents in the Bree Canyon area of Orange County, the final one culminating in a high-speed and extremely dangerous chase with the police. Hopper, married and gainfully employed, would peruse local real estate listings and select targets based on the headshots of female agents he found attractive. He would make an appointment to view one of their listings, break into the house before the agent arrived, hide in a bathroom or closet, and then ambush and brutally rape them. His personality and methods were virtually indistinguishable from the bona fide serial killers I would prosecute later in my career. The only difference was that he didn't kill his victims. Not long after Douglas Hopper case, I was assigned another prolific and brutal serial rapist named Victor Miranda Guerrero. Miranda Guerrero terrorized downtown Huntington Beach in the spring and summer of 2000. He was employed as a dishwasher at a local restaurant and would attack women as they left the busy bar scene late at night. His methods were not as refined as Hopper's. He would simply follow the women, repeatedly bash their heads until they lost consciousness, and then rape them where they lay. Not unpredictably, this eventually led to the death of one of his victims, a young woman named Bridget Ballas. When police served a warrant on the place where Miranda Guerrero was living, they found a collection of trophies from his victims. Not unlike antlers on the wall or fish over a fireplace, little keepsakes or mementos of their victims are saved by many of these predators to remind them of their successful hunts. A classic sign in cases like these. We found a ring belonging to Ballas, an undeveloped roll of film taken from the glove box of another victim, a woman who actually jumped out of her moving car to get away from Miranda Guerrero, and several other items of women's jewelry we couldn't at the time link to any known victims. Serial sex offenders are remarkably consistent in this behavior. Miranda Guerrero was eventually convicted and sentenced to death, but I still had so many questions about this type of killer. Lou, also an alumnus of the sexual assault unit, called Miranda Guerrero a textbook example of what these guys are all about. But I wondered, where was the textbook? Where's the definitive academic authority that had figured out these monsters? I wanted to learn more. A judge friend recommended the book Mindhunter by FBI profiler John Douglas. Douglas had made a strong effort to answer many of the same questions I had. The book led me to an excellent paper presented by the Behavioral Science Unit of the FBI in September 2005, which further led me to a textbook called Psychopathia Sexualis, Sexual Psychopathy, published in 1886 by the German psychiatrist Dr. Richard von Krafft-Ebing. This is perhaps the earliest known attempt to gain a psychiatric understanding of what we would now call serial killers. To say the book was captivating would be an understatement. Dr. von Krafft-Ebing's goal in his research was to understand human sexuality in general and paraphilias, sexual deviancy in particular. Sadistic lust murders, as Dr. von Krafft-Ebing called them, comprised the relatively small portion of the book, but an important one. Contrary to my own misconceptions, it turns out the serial killers have been around for as long as there have been people. Neither the modern world nor America is to blame. After discussing the well-known case of Jack the Ripper, Dr. von Krafft-Ebing discusses the far lesser-known Bakker the Ripper, who stalked the French countryside in the late 1800s, murdering perhaps 24 people. He would rape, strangle, and mutilate his victims, who included girls, women, and boys. It was said that he was born of honorable parents and belonged to a mentally sound family. He never had a severe illness and was from his earliest infancy vicious, lazy, and shy of work. In the end, the final judgment read as follows. His crime are those of antisocial, sadistic, bloodthirsty being who considers himself privileged to commit these atrocities because he was once upon a time treated in an asylum for insanity and thereby escaped well-merited punishment. He is a common criminal and there are no ameliorating circumstances to be found in his favor. V was sentenced to death. Like many of the individuals I would prosecute in the years to come, there was not a single hint of childhood abuse. It seems that Dr. von Krafft-Ebing might have been onto something. From the very beginning, he attempted to understand sadistic lust murders by placing them on a relational spectrum with other paraphilias and associated acts of sexual deviancy. In other words, he considered lust murder to be sex crimes, brutal, sadistic, and terrible, but motivated and intertwined with twisted sexual desire. If you are into reading, I suggest that you, if you're into this type of mentality, you might check out the book called Out of the Shadows by Patrick Carnes. It kind of goes into some of this stuff that I'm talking about right now. That's a great book. And it tells a lot about the sexual deviancy. And it's not about sex. It's about how it progresses throughout. It's an awesome read. Rape and rape murder are certainly crimes of power, but I think we're deluding ourselves if we ignore, as current definition of serial killers seem to do, the sexual motivations of this type of the murderer. There's another definition you repeatedly encounter in this area of study that always struck me as a little odd: the psychopath. In virtually every academic definition, from the DSM-5 to the Hare Psychopathy Checklist, to just about every article ever published on the topic, is characterized as having, among other traits, a lack of empathy. And that seems to be the one, a lack of empathy. It seems strange that we would try to define something that almost all of these offenders actually have: a nameless, violent, perverted drive to prey upon others through the lack of something else: empathy. It seems that the lack of a thing would just take them to neutral. Some psychologists, especially when testifying as defense witnesses, even go so far as to say that the psychopath is incapable of perceiving the fears or feelings of others. And I'm sure that's what we're going to hear in another trial that's coming up soon. In my humble opinion, based on an admittedly anecdotal sampling of a mere half a dozen or so of these individuals, this truly misses the mark. In my experience, these guys are not only perfectly capable of perceiving the emotions of other people, they're highly attuned to them. They lustfully enjoy the imposition of fear, pain, and the cruelty on innocent others. Not only do they perceive this suffering, they derive immense sexual gratification by inflicting it. Where did it go? Did I skip too far up? God, I lost my place. Anyways, I think I'll go right there. There it is. This deriving desire is not the absence of a thing, but a thing in itself. It is a burning, lustful, joyous desire to prey upon, dominate, and then inflict as much fear and pain as possible. We just don't seem to have a word for it. Cruelty partially fits. Sadism come close. The German word, I'm not even going to try to say it, taking delight in the suffering of others, is in the ballpark, but there isn't a term I am aware of that accurately describes what compels these people to do what they do. I believe in science, but the further you go back in the historical record, the more you encounter a simple word, religious in origin, that may most accurately summarize the mindset of true serial killers. It seems to fit better than anything: evil. And I'm going to stop right there. That way I can start up at that place. Evil. And I'm going to show you the book I was talking about. So if you have Amazon, you can go and read this book, because it tells a lot. If you are dealing with anybody that has any kind of addiction to sexual deviancy or pornography or anything like that, it's called Out of the Shadows: Understanding Sexual Addiction by Patrick Carnes, PhD. It goes way deeper than just talking about sex addiction. It talks about a lot of different things, and it's a very, very awesome book. What y'all think about my reading tonight? It was fair, wasn't it? Better than it has been for sure. My eyes getting a little better each day, so just having a lot of problems lately. I just don't get it. Let me show y'all that little clip of the dating game. I'm shocked that not 150 people are doing the freaking Idaho Fort thing tonight. I think there's probably about 2 or 3 that I've seen flash across my screen. More power to them. Well, thank you, Texas. I've been meaning to reach out to you guys, and I hope that if you do have my Discord, I did put on there that I've been taking time from my schooling. It's been a tough one so far, you know what I mean? So here's the dating game. Here's the dating game episode of what the hell? What was his name? Rodney James Alcala. Here we go. I don't remember this because I was too young, couldn't watch this stuff.
Jim Wyatt. Hey. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And welcome to the dating game. And we'll get right underway. It's time to meet our first 3 eligible bachelors for game number 1. And here they are. Good luck, gentlemen. Well, let's see. Back to number. Welcome to this very stage a confirmed bachelor who believes in life, liberty, and the happiness of pursuit. He is an actor, a snorkel buff, and he's from New York, Jed Mills. Jed, good luck to you. And bachelor number 3 first became interested in acting when at 7 he played Frosty the Snowman in a school play. Now, years later, his agent keeps telling him there are just no jobs around for a balding, middle-aged snowflake anymore. That's not true. He works a lot. He's into music and soccer. Here is Armand Chiami. Armand. And those are our 3 bachelors for the game, and we'll be right back to meet our young lady after this. Don't go away. And it's time to meet our young lady for game number 1, and here she is. Here is a young lady with a wealth of experience. She once earned a living.
I do have a question, though. I've seen old pictures of my dad, and he definitely wore bell bottoms, and he had the perm, and he had all the big collared shirts and all that stuff. Did y'all wear that stuff back then? I was like, what? Yeah, that's the contestant that was gonna go on a date with contestant number 1, Rodney Alcala. Here we go.
Massaging feet, but she quit when her boss suggested that she work her way up. Then she taught school in Phoenix, Arizona, and now she's here to educate our 3 bachelors in the art of amour. Welcome, if you will, sensational Cheryl Bradshaw. Hello, Cheryl. Don't sit down yet. Just a minute. Want to make sure everything is straight. You relax? You feel okay? All right. You know there are 3 bachelors over there. There'll be 1, 2, and 3. Ask them anything you like to find out more about them, except their name, age, occupation, or income, okay? And we're going to start by having them say hello to you and see how they sound. Number 1, would you say hello to Cheryl, please?
We're going to have a great time together, Cheryl.
Okay. Number 2.
There he is.
Hi, Cheryl. It's nice to almost meet you.
And number 3.
Cheryl. Hello.
Oh, you got a lot to work with there, I'll tell you. Are you ready? Questions all set?
Oh, I'm all ready.
All right, please have a seat then, Cheryl, if you would. Make yourself comfortable. When you're situated, you may begin. Good luck, gentlemen, and here we go.
Nighttime,
Why do you say that?
because that's the only time there is.
The only time? What's wrong with morning, afternoon?
Well, they're okay, but nighttime's when it really gets good. Then you're really ready.
How about you, bachelor number 2?
This aired 9/13/1978, so 3 days after my birthday, man. So I would have been 7 years old when this aired. 7 years old. Not a damn clue what this was.
Right now.
Right now, anytime. Right here in front of everybody, huh?
Now's the best time.
Anytime, huh? Okay, Bachelor number 2. There's one thing I've been wondering about all my life.
Just one, huh?
Just one. What's the difference between a soldier and a sailor?
Well, soldier never gets his feet wet.
He never gets his feet wet.
I thought that was very good. Number 2, right?
I kind of liked it.
Rim shot.
It takes a little time, you know.
Yeah, he's right.
Okay, Bachelor number 3. Sing me to sleep. And remember, I'm not your average baby.
Chantilly lace and a pretty face and a ponytail hanging down. A wiggle and a walk and a giggle and a talk. Love makes the world go round.
Beautiful Bachelor number 3. Just beautiful. Great voice. I'm a drama teacher.
Oh, honey, we ought to go out and boogie.
Really?
Bachelor number 2. You're an innocent virgin maiden writing in her diary.
An innocent virgin maiden.
Yes.
Writing in your diary, dear diary.
Dear diary, I'm longing not to be an innocent virgin maiden any longer.
Yes. Bachelor number 3. You're yourself having a complete nervous breakdown after our first date.
Cheryl. Why? Please come back and kiss me goodnight.
Bachelor number 3, I'm going to make you a star someday. How about you, Bachelor number 2? If I was serving you for dinner, what would you be like?
I'd be like a tall glass of wine in a short glass.
All right, while you figure that one out, it's time now, Cheryl, to make up your mind. So relax and think about it. And while Cheryl decides which one of the 3 bachelors she thinks is the best for her, which one gets the date, we'll take a little time out to be sure. Welcome back to the dating game, and Cheryl, we have reached the moment of truth, as we call it. I won't even ask any more questions about that. I'll just tell you something about the other bachelors. You didn't choose number 2, who did a fine acting job as a virgin maiden. He is an actor, a skin diver from New York City. Say hi to Jed Mills. Jed, come on in, new show. Ah, shucks. You didn't choose number 3 either, and he is into music and soccer. You can get over here, Jed, so the other guy can get in. Attaboy. And here he is, Armand Chiami. All right, Armand. Oh, wow. Well, gentlemen, you missed out on the date. We're sorry about that. We do have some gifts for you, though, and you played a great game. Really super. Thanks so much. Okay, come back and see us again. Thank you. There they go. However, you did leave one remaining, and this is your date, and I want to tell you something about him. Cheryl, he's a skydiver, so he's got a lot of nerve. He's into motorcycle. Did it with a one answer. Well, as far as I can see, Cheryl and Rodney, it looks like the 2 of you may be involved in some sort of racket. So we're going to have you take to the court. Oh, first, you'll receive tennis lessons from expert Naomi Besa of the famous Kirkwood Tennis Club. That starts. And you'll soon be acing everyone off the courts. And to make sure you both look as professional as you'll become, complete tennis outfits will be provided by Bill Darling's Tennis Shop. It'll really make you look like part of the racket set. Then it's off the Magic Mountain, one of America's greatest and most complete amusement parks, with plenty of excitement to challenge any daring digger, like the Revolution that'll help you turn the town upside down, and of course the world's greatest roller coaster, the Colossus. Magic Mountain, just a half an hour north of Hollywood, California. So have fun playing tennis. Thank you, Rodney. Thank you. Okay. You can go relax, meet each other, say hello, get acquainted, and they'll be back. And before we begin our next game, let's find out what runners-up will receive today from Johnny Jacobs. John?
Now that doesn't show every woman in America always choosing the bad boy. He is the definition of the bad boy. She lucked out. She lucked out that she called that date off. You know what I mean? She lucked out on that one. She could have been one of his victims. He did look like Richard Ramirez. I agree. Richard was evil looking though, man. He had that dark, I don't know. He looked like a rocker, but this dude looks like, I don't know. Could have been a musician, but she backed out backstage. I was kidding. I didn't mean to choose you. I wanted the bald guy. Let me have the bald guy. He's more like my daddy, you know? Anyways, that is just crazy. That is just crazy to me that he was on the freaking dating game while detectives were getting ready to go to his house, to go look through his home. Isn't that creepy in a way? That word creepy is right there again, right? Yeah, she was lucky. Can you imagine? She could have been one of the ones. One of the ones. Well, it is almost 10:30 and I have some stretching and stuff I need to do. Hope you guys have enjoyed this. It wasn't Idaho. I know it wasn't. But, sometimes we got to do other things, Sometimes we got to do other things. Michelle said he creeped her out so bad that she told the production she didn't want to go out with him. Wow. There's that definition of creepy. That scenario right there. Yeah, we will get back to the book. I enjoy reading that book. Matt, hopefully will be on panel one day. I've discussed through his people. He's just a very busy man. And I have some other things lined up as well. Hopefully once school, winds down and I finish up, then I can really hit the YouTube stuff pretty hardcore. Let me see if there's anything. Are you guys watching the shorts that I upload? Because some of those things are pretty good too. Kind of like this one. It already has 1,000 views. It's hit the interview with the Martinez guy where he said that Brian brought up the murder like days after and was talking about they didn't have any real clues or anything and they were saying it was a crime of passion. It's really kind of interesting. And of course we still have those people that are trying to stay relevant through the last closing months, that they have to be relevant until the trial. Like I've always said, you know what? If the man gets off and he ends up innocent, karma has a way of equalizing things in this cruel world of ours. And I'm sure he will get his in the end, regardless of what people believe or want to happen. Karma is an ugly thing. That new one in the northeast may be a good one to follow. Which one is that? The Emily Pike one? I plan on doing that one still. I just haven't, like I said, I've really been preoccupied with other things, and I want to take care of my business first. So, what do I always say? I'm going to play something, even though I'm not going to play it. Yeah, I've been watching a lot of his. Yeah, the Gilgo Beach Killer is a good one, too. I'm going to play this one. This was a good movie that I watched a long time ago, and I watched it multiple times. It's called The Story of David. Wait. Here, I'll show it and then see if it's on there. Oh, The Life of David Gale.
Bitsy, we spend our whole lives trying to stop death. Eating, inventing, loving, praying, fighting, killing. But what do we really know about death? Just that nobody comes back. But there comes a point in life, a moment, when your mind outlives its desires, its obsessions, when your habits survive your dreams, and when your losses maybe death is a gift.
That is an awesome movie, The Life of David Gale. And it was based in the Texas prison system. I don't know if it's real or not, but if you like mystery movies and you like watching movies that you think you know what's going on, this one will throw you in the end. It really will. It did. They did go to a barbecue place that I've frequented in Austin. It's an old hole-in-the-wall type place. They go in that movie. I think it's Sam's Barbecue or something like that. But I ended up going to that barbecue place, and that barbecue place is where it's at. It is real. It is the real deal. But check out that movie. Check out that movie. The Life of David Gale. It's an older one. So y'all check it out, all right? Well, I'm going to head on out. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful rest of the week. I might be on this weekend. Who knows? Be sure you have your notifications on or join the Discord, and I usually put it under the announcements when I'm going to go live. I didn't tonight because I just did this at the spur of the moment. But thank you for all the new subscribers. Hopefully you will be able to be in here in the chat and intertwine with the people that are already in here. Hope to see y'all soon. Maestro, cue that music.